Junkyard Season 1, Episode 3. Yeah! It's going to be a fun show for you today. I got a bunch of stuff lined up for you. Have a killer interview with the Becker Band's frontman, Lo Becker. He'll be talking about his journey in music, how he got started with the band, where his inspiration comes from for his songwriting, and a whole bunch of other amazing things. Also have a killer talent show performance for you today by the band Something Like Yesterday, who sent in an awesome video for us to broadcast on the show, with a special introduction by the frontman for that band, Kelly Pipin. Anyway, gonna be a killer show. Got a couple of news stories for you. We're gonna spend some time talking about COVID, like we always do. Yep. But, you know, it would be inappropriate of me to kick the show off without giving out a plug for my books. So please, if you haven't already, get on over to Amazon, search Jack Kiesling, and buy my books, right? I have 2 books out right now. A Thin Red Line just came out a couple of weeks ago. The Fist of Arken came out in September, okay? Check those 2 books out. They're amazing. I need you to buy them so that I can have money, so that I may write more. So I don't, get kicked out of my house or anything like that. I mean, I own it, so if I get kicked out of my house, so we've gone through a lengthy legal process and me not paying my bills, but that's not going to happen. So rest assured I won't be homeless. That is not the point. All right? You guys are already kicking it off with comments. Chris says, woo, thank you. And then Kelly, for some reason, put the entire alphabet in the comments, so thank you for that. Very interesting. I don't know that Kelly smoked bad weed. I don't think that's something Kelly does. Brenda, dudette. He stopped at P to respond to Brenda. Hi. Yep, Izzy's not here. Yep, peanut number 1 is not in the peanut gallery today. Yeah, so Chris, that's a great question. Why is it season 1? So you may have noticed that 2 episodes ago, I drastically changed the format of the show. I added the interview section, I added the talent show section, I changed the layout and the look, the feel of the show, all of it. I've learned a ton about broadcasting over the last 2 years that I've been running Jack's Junkyard. Some of you may remember when it started, it was Chat with Jack. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been so many different things. Originally, it was just me live broadcasting from my laptop while I was sitting on the couch, and I would talk about whatever popped into my head for 2 hours. And then it was an hour and a half, and it started having a little bit of structure, and then I changed, how I presented the show, and I was using Be Live for a while, and that was fun. And then, I got back into OBS and started using this system. And, so it's gone through a lot of iterations. The Jack's Junkyard name came out a couple months ago. And as I've progressed and I've started adding sections to the show, my time investment in broadcasting has gotten a lot longer. So, it may not seem like it when you're out there looking at it, but I started building this show, this one that you're going to see tonight, on Wednesday. Okay? So, I work on it bits and pieces here and there, and then, on broadcast day, it's like go all day, jamming, getting the show ready, editing the interview footage and getting all the scenes set up right, and audio and all that stuff. And it still seems like I come down to the wire like every time. So, so I decided with the structure change, we're going to establish, a show season, and this is what it is. And that way you guys, have some idea of what to look for. My intention is to run 25 episodes per season, and then I'll take some weeks off. Yeah, because I need them. Okay. And then, we'll kick back off, a month later with season 2, and we'll just keep progressing like that. That's the intention of how it's going to go. Yeah. Go Avalanche. Absolutely. Yes, I'm giving Kelly more FaceTime because he's amazing. And he's super supportive of everything that all of us do, and it's about time somebody paid him back. Yeah, who knew I wrote books? You ran out of time. And then he lost track of time. It happens when you get old. So was it turtle snake in the Missouri River? I don't know. Hey, Becker's here. What's up, man? Lo Becker is on the show. Oh, and there he finished his alphabet. Awesome. All right, well, cool. I'm very excited for the show today. Let's get this thing started. All right, welcome to Jack's Junkyard interview segment. I am your host, Jack Kiesling, and with me tonight is Lo Becker, the frontman of the Becker Band. And this is a guy that I met recently at Disgruntled Vet Fest 2020 in Colorado Springs. He's an awesome guy, a great performer, leads a killer band, and I'm really excited to have him on the show with us tonight. So Lo, tell us who you are, man.
Yeah, my name's Lo Becker. I'm the owner and lead singer of the Becker Band that I created not too long ago. So,
So you said not too long ago. What are we talking time frame here?
um, I started the band about it's like August of last year,
Oh wow.
roughly.
Okay, so almost a year old.
Almost a year. Yeah, almost a year.
That's really impressive because you've already played a number of pretty decent sized gigs, and just looking at your website and some of the things that you guys have done, and you've already built a pretty good fan following as well. To do that in a year is really impressive. Is this something you've done previously in other bands, or is this a brand new deal for you?
No, this is completely brand new for me. I actually started playing the guitar about 7 months ago. So I taught myself how to play the guitar. Started writing songs and stuff about 7 months ago, and it's just been taking off ever since. So
7 months ago. That's
yes.
incredible. Okay, that's just amazing. So, and I know because I've seen you perform that you have a lot of original stuff, and you also have some kind of reworkings of traditional classics and stuff like that. So, if you were to classify the Becker Band in a genre, I think on your website you say you're country rock, but you're also a little bit of outlaw country. Is that is that an accurate descriptor?
That is, and I wanted to kind of stay with kind of the old school sound of the outlaw country. I love Johnny Cash, some Merle, and just I love those sounds. I'm a rock and roller at heart. Grew up listening to alternative music and stuff, and always kind of drawn to country music and stuff, and that's what just kind of led me into the genre of keeping it more of a country rock and outlaw country.
So no hiccup in your future then. No, that's cool, man. So, okay, I gotta ask though. So 7 months ago, you pick up a guitar, and you're like, "I'm gonna teach myself to play guitar. I'm gonna teach myself to write songs." What prompted all of that? I mean, that's not typically something that people just decide one day, "I'm gonna do this."
No, my PTSD has been kicking in a lot more, and for I got out of the military in 2006, and I just really didn't understand it. A lot of veterans out there, including myself, for the longest time I was afraid to go and talk to somebody about things, and I thought they were going to take my guns away. So there was a real big misconception of what I didn't know, and as
Right.
opposed to what I did know. So I just started noticing that I was developing a lot of bad behaviors. I was getting really angry and irritable. It's more than normal. Started going to see a therapist at the VA, and then she kind of recommended that I started to journal. I told her I hate writing in journals. I've tried it before in the past. I'm like, oh. And then she asked me, well, what do I enjoy doing? And I said I enjoy singing. And she's like, well, why don't you, instead of writing a journal, write about your military experience and stuff like that. You can put the bad things, but you don't have to share it with anybody. But it's at least getting it down on paper. So I started there, and that's where I wrote that first song of Thank 'Em, and it's kind of just taken off through there at that point.
So you started writing songs as that coping mechanism to deal with some of the PTSD and trauma and stuff. Have you stuck with that as your inspiration, or have you expanded out to find new inspirations for your songwriting?
So some of the songs that I have, my dad passed away, and he was a veteran. He served in the Marine Corps, so he never really got it out to a lot of people. And there's some songs that I'm just like, "Whoa, Dad, what were you thinking?" And then there's some songs that I'm like, "Okay, well, I can take and work with this." And I kind of collaborated with the words, but I don't know how or what his mind was to have it. So I kind of write it in my own words at this point, and take some bits and pieces out. So and it's just to show my gratitude for his love of music as well.
And what a cool
So
legacy. That's awesome.
my plan was to actually reach out to USO and then plan for next year to do a USO tour. When I was overseas, I was grateful for the entertainment, and we definitely enjoyed that. So I wanted to give back as well to that and the troops and stuff, and then share my music with them and share my love of music as well. So
One thing that stood out to me about your shows is you do the have the whole group say aloha together. So
oh yeah.
where did that come from? Why did that thing start?
Because now that you know and you got to know who I am, I'm all about family, and we don't have to be like brothers, by birth or anything like that. And it's just my Hawaiian background, and also my military background of just being like one family. You know what I mean?
Well, that's awesome, man. So big things I'm certain are in store for the Becker Band in the future. And then you can check out the Becker Band online at I believe it's thebeckerband.com. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you're also on Facebook at the Becker Band. So if you have any interest in supporting a great musician, a great guy, and a band that's out there to support veterans and to put some positivity in the world, go check those guys out at thebeckerband.com and the Becker Band on Facebook. Hit them up on SoundCloud, share their stuff around, get people talking about this band. They definitely deserve the support. All right, so a great interview with Lo Becker. We had a ton of fun talking. There's a lot more to the interview. We talked about some of his personal background in the military and what he did during his service. But, obviously for time constraints, can't really have all of that. And you may have noticed during the interview that Lo's image got frozen a time or two, and the audio was a little bit goofy. Unfortunately, the night we set up the Zoom call to do this interview, a huge storm was ripping through my area, so we had some trouble with signal issues and stuff like that. So some of those bits of the interview, you couldn't really tell what we were talking about. But here's the thing. I was blessed to see this man perform at VetFest 2020 in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with his band. They put on an amazing show. He's a super charismatic guy. As soon as he comes on stage, there's like, who is this guy? Like, and some of you in the comments are like, oh, Jack likes country now. No, I don't, okay? But what I do like is performers that are super plugged into their performance and are paying attention to their audience and can read the room and give us the environment that we need to get excited and to feel good and to enjoy the night. And Lo Becker definitely delivers that excitement and that fun. Everything he does on stage is just, he's been doing it for 7 months, but I told him, with the fan base that he's got on the internet, and two, with the amazing ability he has to deliver an incredible live performance, it's like he's been at it for years. So definitely somebody that's deserving of support and deserving of good fan base. Definitely big things in store for Lo Becker and the Becker Band in the future. With that, it is time for us to move on to some news.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The News.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So a couple of news stories for us tonight. The first, many of you are aware that a humongous explosion rocked Beirut, Lebanon earlier this last week. This explosion took place in the warehouse that you see on your screen circled in red. Now, that warehouse was used to store a variety of things. Fireworks, they had some chemical fertilizers in storage there, and a whole bunch of other things, okay? So the official statement coming out of Lebanon is that fire broke out amidst the fireworks storage area, and that fire spread to the rest of the building, igniting the fertilizer stored in the building. Now, this was before, as you can see, and here is the after, okay? So let's take a look at these two images in short order, okay? So here's your before. There's the warehouse. They have this kind of floating pier system, landscape that they've got here. And you see that building behind the warehouse, that's above it on your screen. Now let's go back to that after image, okay? So you see that the warehouse next to the warehouse where the fire broke out has been completely destroyed. The building behind it completely destroyed. Significant amount of damage to a lot of the surrounding area, okay? Yeah. Here's the thing. I bring this up. I know a lot of people are aware of it, and I usually tend to focus on stories that are more positive in nature, that people probably haven't heard about in mainstream news. But here's why I bring this up. Over the last week since this tragedy occurred, I've seen some kind of bothersome things on the internet from a lot of people in my friends group and, in internet groups that I am part of and that I support, veterans groups and so on and so forth. What I've seen is people making a huge joke out of this tragedy. Okay. Last time I checked, there were over 140 confirmed deaths in this thing and a ton of people missing, and well over 1,000 people injured. We're talking multi-million dollars worth of property damage, and not just to industrial areas, but to people's homes, right? But what I've seen is a ton of people making jokes out of this thing. Like a ton of people making jokes out of this thing. Yeah. Guys, we cannot be a society that is so desensitized to death that we just flippantly joke about it. And here's the other problem I have with that. A lot of the people that I've seen posting memes and making jokes out of this tragedy are the same people who would absolutely lose their gourd if somebody cracked jokes about the Khobar Towers bombing or the 9/11 attacks or any of the major industrial accidents that have happened in the United States where loss of life has occurred, right? I don't understand the difference between it's our people and it's their people, and if it's our people it's not funny and it's not okay to make jokes about it, but if it's their people it's fine. I don't understand that. Okay, last I checked, we're all part of the same humanity. We all live on the same planet. Okay? And what happens to one country will inevitably have a drastic effect on the rest of the countries on the planet. There's no question about this. Okay? It's not a maybe it'll affect us. It will. Without a doubt have a drastic effect on the rest of us because this planet is super interconnected these days. There are very few countries on the world, first world, second world, third world, it doesn't matter. There are very few countries left on the planet that are not connected in one way, shape, or form, economically, technology-wise, import-export, information sharing. It doesn't really matter. We're all super connected. So even if your idea of, safety and security and what's right and wrong centers around the United States, it still will have a negative impact on our world eventually. If that is your viewpoint, that life in the U.S. is people in the U.S. are really the only ones that matter, then I feel sorry for you because I will tell you I've been to a lot of places in the world. I've never been to Lebanon, unfortunately, but I've been a lot of places in the world, and I will tell you that there are a lot of countries out there that do it right. There are a lot of people out there that are deserving of our support and our love and our sympathy when tragedies occur. And if your mindset is so focused on just the U.S. as the only thing that really matters, and don't get me twisted, I'm not saying that American pride is wrong. I'm not saying that having pride in your nation, whatever nation you're from, is wrong. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is if this level of a major tragedy can occur anywhere in the world, and your first reaction to that is to make jokes and to make memes and laugh about it and not think about the incredible loss of human life. I mean, innocent people that are just going about their, it's like 9/11, right? Innocent people just going about their day-to-day business and get blinked out of existence, right? Now, obviously 9/11 was a terrorism attack. This isn't an accident, but I don't really see the difference in terms of loss of life. I remember when 9/11 happened and, the internet was in its kind of infancy at that point as far as social access and stuff like that. But still, very quickly, news stories and stories of other people in other countries or even people in the United States laughing about it and making jokes were spread around. And the standard American response to that is, we need to get these guys. We need to smash these people. You can't make jokes about whole bunches of people losing their lives. But then when it happens in some other country, it's okay. So that's my rub with this, guys. This is not just a small thing. This is huge. I mean, look at that. Look at this. We have a bustling metropolis here, warehouses and big buildings and all of this. And then all of a sudden, all of that is just gone. That's huge, right? We need to, as a people, become more conscious of what happens to other people in the world. We need to develop a compassion for other human beings, regardless of what nation they're from, regardless of the color of their skin or their religion or whatever. And somebody said, I kind of got on them and I was like, dude, that's really not cool. A lot of people died. And they're like, their response to that was, well, Lebanon doesn't really like us. And chances are, there was more to this story than just an accident. Blah 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 blah, conspiracy theory and all that stuff, and I'm a big fan of conspiracy theories. I think they're wildly interesting to think about, but I don't buy into most of them, but I think they're very entertaining. And I get that Lebanon has not been super friendly as a nation to United States geopolitically speaking, but here's the thing: I don't give a damn, because it wasn't the government that got their universal uppance in this tragedy. It was everyday people going about their lives. The average citizenry of any nation in the world doesn't really know what's going on in their government behind the scenes, and they don't care, right? Especially when it deals with things that are not immediately in front of them. I mean, think about it. The only time people in this country get upset with the government is when they do something that has an effect on our lives day to day. And most of the time, we don't really care. Like, we put our blinders on and we're like, they're doing what they're doing. As long as they don't raise my taxes or restrict my rights or whatever, I don't really care. So the people that died in this tragedy were not the people responsible for the Lebanese government, being mean to the U.S. They were everyday people going about their lives. How tragic would it be if, we were going about our everyday lives and all of a sudden some crazy accident happened and blinked us out of existence? And that image that you see on the screen right there is, what a city block in the U.S. looked like because of some accident. It's happened before, right? We need to develop that compassion for people, no matter what country they're from or, what demographic they represent. It doesn't matter. We need to develop that compassion so where we can look at tragedies like this and accept that this is a horrible thing. People who didn't deserve to die lost their lives. Yeah. It really upset me seeing all of the jokes and just the flippant comments that people made about this. So, like I said, I understand that you all probably already know about this and you're like, yeah, it's old news, Jack. It happened a week ago. But we need to think about some of this stuff before we just start making comments, Let me catch up on some comments real quick before we go on to the next news story. You got a couple people. No, okay, so there's no comments on this show specifically, or on this segment specifically. I'll catch up on all your comments about Low, Becker, and VetFest after the news segment. With that, on to a more positive story. I love archaeology, especially underwater archaeology, and so really cool discovery, all right? So underwater explorer by the name of Massimo Domenichino Bondon has located the wreck of the HMS P311. Okay, so this was a submarine during World War II that was known as the King Tut or the Tutankhamun. So this ship was not officially named that because some of you know this probably. Prior to the end of 1942, there was not a regulation in the Royal Navy to have all ships bear a name. Some of the flagships had names, but not all of the submarines, destroyers, smaller ships had a name. So this one went out to sea and was given its name. It's the only ship in the Royal Navy to have ever been named after an Egyptian pharaoh, but it was given the name Tutankhamun, and it was out at sea, so it was never officially given that name. Okay, so P311 set sail in 1942, in December of 1942, and she was to sail to the coast of Italy to engage enemy shipping and stuff like that, right? She had a very dangerous mission because she was to infiltrate some mined harbors and sink enemy shipping. Unfortunately, in January 1943, contact was lost with P311, and nobody really knew why. Okay, so with the discovery of the wreck, they now have been able to put together the story of what happened. So let's take a look at what they found. Okay, so this blurry image that you can see right here is P311 sitting on the bottom of the sea. She was about 100 miles from her objective when she struck a mine with the bow of the ship. So that's what they've been able to determine by the underwater archaeology going on with this. They are 100% certain it is P311 because when she set sail, P311 was carrying 2 chariots. So chariots were 2-man mini subs that would attach to the outside of a mother sub. They would sail across to where they needed to go, and then the smaller subs would detach, go in, secret squirrel style, and then do what they needed to do in the harbor, whether it was laying mines, destroying mines, or destroying enemy shipping. And so the 2 chariots still attached to the outside of the ship. She was the only one in that part of the ocean to be carrying chariots who never detached them. So definitely P311. This is a big deal because she went down with all hands. Okay, so what's interesting about this wreck is that the bow of the ship struck a mine. Okay, only the bow of the ship is damaged. The remainder of the ship seems very intact, and according to the team that was down looking at the wreck, they believe she probably maintained watertight configuration through the majority of the ship. Okay, so what that means is that the human remains of the sailors who were on board that vessel when she went down, a good majority of them are likely still on that vessel, and potentially able to be recovered and given proper burials, dependent on decision of the Royal Navy. And this is something that's very subject to debate because you have 2 sides of the coin, right? One side of the argument says that ships go down, and the people that go down with them, that becomes their grave. That is their final resting place. Sailors typically are very loyal to the ship, and stay with their brothers and sisters and so on and so forth. The other side of the coin is that for families and closure, having proper burials, back in their home nations, whether any part of the UK the crew came from, would provide them that closure and give them, that sense of peace with, the finality of the situation. So 2 sides of the debate there. We will see in the future what the English government decides to do with that wreck. Recovering the wreck itself, extremely unlikely because of the depth that it's at. And even if they were able to do so, generally speaking, we don't raise ships that went down in combat like that. Just because there will undoubtedly be human remains unrecoverable no matter the condition of the ship, and the ship should stay with those who fought and died on her. So still a very, very interesting find. This has opened the door for underwater exploration in the area, seeking other ships that went down during the war. Now, the past several weeks on the show, we've seen some very interesting images of underwater exploration. We featured the finding of the wreck, the Wido, which was Black Bellamy's pirate ship back in the Golden Age of Piracy. And we've had some discoveries of other warships on the show in the past. So this is really, really cool. These things to be, popping up like hotcakes. Well, when you think about archaeology in general, there's not a ton out there that we haven't already found examples of, right? Certainly there are things we've not discovered. There are locations that, lost cities and stuff like that we haven't found. But there are examples of pretty much everything we've discovered, right? We've pretty much picked clean the battlefields across Europe from World War I, World War II, in a lot of places that are at least safe to travel. There are certainly places that we can't go due to the high number of unexploded ordnance in those places. But we've pretty well picked clean a lot of the battlefields across the world from, conflicts within kind of the current age of the world. But it's the underwater archaeology that we've only really begun to scratch the surface of. And we're finding that dependent on the depth and the water conditions, artifacts remain a lot longer than we expect them to. Generally speaking, when we think about artifacts underwater, we expect them to deteriorate quickly, especially metal objects in salt water and so on and so forth. But what we find is that pressure and temperature make a drastic difference on how long things will remain. So this trend of finding these shipwrecks on the bottom of the ocean very much speeding up, and there are tons more teams out there exploring now than there used to be. So I'm very excited to see what things come up in the future and what amazing things they're able to find preserved in time on the bottom of the ocean. So very interesting stuff there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all we have for the news today. Thank you for tuning in.
The Fists of Arken is the debut novel by author Jack Kiesling. Action, adventure, and personal challenges are the focal point of this immersive book, set against a backdrop of war. Deep character development and wide perspectives explore social issues relevant to the real world. Dive in and discover the answer to the age-old question faced by leaders many. What kind of royal will you be? This is a paid advertisement for Jack Kiesling Books and the Fist of Arken.
For some reason, the video dropped from that commercial, so I had a ton of problems with OBS this week. A lot of the slides that I built last week disappeared. So I'm not really sure. So last week I had a commercial for Thin Red Line with some really cool slow motion capture footage and, you know, all that stuff. And all I was going to do this week was add a new soundtrack to it, but it disappeared for some reason. So I don't really know what happened with that. Yeah, and then the video dropped off of that one. So interesting stuff. But before we continue on with what's up in Arken, let me back up and catch some comments. You guys were going crazy when Lo Becker's interview was on, and I want to make sure he gets that recognition. Some of the comments I already replied to in the chat, so I'm not going to go over those again. But also, I really don't think Sonny and Cher or a Cher song is going to happen with Lo and Kelly. I don't see that happening. But yes, aloha indeed, Lisa. Yeah, and Brenda as well. Yeah, they are on Reverb Nation. You are absolutely right. Yeah, I agree, Chris. So those of you who've seen the footage from VetFest or were there probably recognize that there wasn't a ton of crowd participation. I showed a clip last week from VetFest of kind of my stage time and my stand-up comedy that that I did out there, and there wasn't a ton of crowd participation. There was a reason for that. Due to COVID regulations currently in place in Colorado Springs, Colorado, we were fairly limited on the amount of crowd that we could have indoors, and we had to follow those regulations. So only the VIP seating and the bar line was inside. Everything else at the venue was outside, and it was really cool. Like, the outside areas were amazing. It was super, super fun, but the outside couldn't see the inside, if you will. So, you know, Lowe's band is up there performing, and they can't get a ton of audience response. Anybody who has ever performed on stage will tell you that a ton of your energy comes from the audience response, right? It's really hard to get up there and be super jazzed and get pumped and excited when you've got 25 people in the room in front of you. And that's the only audience response you get. And then because of COVID regulations, they are set back a good ways from the stage. So, you know, it's tough. Hopefully, by the time we hit VetFest 2021, we won't have those restrictions anymore. We'll be able to have a ton more people packed into the venue, and they'll be right up against the stage where, you know, we performers love to have them. Not that I'm a performer in the caliber of Lo Becker, because I'm certainly not. But, you know, I've been on stage a number of times in my life for a number of reasons, doing a number of different things, and it's super, super fun. But it's really only fun when that audience is up on top of you. So my hat's off to Lo Becker and Kelly Pipin and Sailor Jerry and everybody else that was on stage performing at the event, because they were able to keep that energy up pretty well, you know, without having that immediate audience response. So, yeah. No, Lo, you are awesome, and you are deserving of every good thing that I can possibly say about you. I had a ton of fun talking to this guy. I met him at the VIP pre-party for VetFest, which was the night before at Cockpit Distillery, which you haven't checked out Cockpit Distillery on Facebook or in real life, you're wrong. They're amazing. Yeah, I agree. The audience response was better toward the end, Brenda. They noticed Lowe's talent and his charisma and, you know, what was going on stage and his just excitement for it. And the audience really started picking up and participating a lot more. It was cool. And, you know, he was the first band up too, and that's always a tough slot to be in. The ones that were inside saw his personality and drive. It wasn't on the screens outside yet. Now, we didn't have the screens outside until Sailor Jerry came on, and I'm not sure why that was. The satellite locations had it, but I haven't heard anything about the response from those. But people were definitely gravitating toward the doors to be able to watch him and listen, and people jumped in the bar line just because they wanted to hear him. So really cool. Yeah, for sure. It was a little difficult to see people with the door open. Yeah, for sure. Man, and Lo, you got some awesome stuff in the comments. Brenda and Lisa are putting some great stuff in the comments, so check those out at your leisure. I know the ad makes you look like you're in the void of Arken. I'm not sure why it dropped the video. Jack's British high tone is hideous. Oh yeah, for sure. I did it on purpose. All the goofy voices I make, like, I'm not trying to be authentic in any accent. I just do goofy stuff because it's fun for me. They did have the projector set up outside, but you couldn't see it until sundown. Oh yeah, yeah, I think you're right. They probably didn't have it running yet because the sun would have blocked it out anyway. You want the audience on you next year? Yeah, for sure. I agree with Brenda. I don't think we're gonna do a Chris Dogpile. But with that, what's up in Arken? So many of you know that the next project coming out of Arken Forge Productions will be a second edition of the Fist of Arken. So like I've told you guys in the past, I've learned a ton about editing process between the first book and the second book. So we're going to do a reissue of that. I'm in progress with that. A couple more weeks and I'll have that ready. Once again, like if you already purchased the Fist of Arken, you won't need to repurchase it. Characters aren't changing. Story details aren't changing. I'm just cleaning up the language a little bit and redesigning the cover. It's really not that big a deal. But after that, I will get started on writing the Tears of Arken, which will be the next book coming out of my space, you know, or the space between my ears. I'm really excited for this. Oh my god, it's different. I mean, it's an Arken story for sure, but it's different. You know, the previous book was set in this huge landscape of war and, you know, surprise attacks on nations. They weren't prepared for it, and Princess has to run, you know, and it's all about, you know, the king and Lord Commander Fax and Lord Aurelius trying to preserve the kingdom and keep the enemies from, you know, from winning and taking over. And, you know, it's a chaotic environment that they're in. Well, Tears of Arken is not in that chaos. So where we had a humongous war in the previous novel, we're at a peacetime, right? But just as we know in the United States and in many nations around the world, peace does not necessarily mean all is well. You may recall, if you've read the book, at the very end of the Fist of Arken, Princess Leandria made some pretty drastic decisions about policy and politics and gave some leadership positions to some folks and made some changes to the law of Arken and some things like that. Well, sometimes in leadership, we make decisions from the places of best intention, but they don't always work out the way we wanted them to. So, I wonder what's going to happen. You may also remember in the Fist of Arken, we talked a little bit about the Elk Lord. The Elk Lord's a party guy. He likes to party, right? He's young. He's all about using that lordship to have fun. Yeah, maybe that's going to come back to bite him in the ass a little bit. I don't know. We've also talked a good bit in the Fist of Arken about Jaxus's origins and how he's originally from the island of Jurin. And the Jurin people, well, they're a little bit different. They live extremely long lives, but no matter how long they live, most of them are forever plagued by this just incessant need to go back to Jurin. And Jaxus keeps talking about how it's not possible to go back to Jurin, and we don't really know why. You know, we kind of hint that there's some bad blood between Jurin and Arken, but we never really explore that a whole lot. Well, you will find out a whole lot more about Jurin and Jaxus' origins and all of that stuff in the Tears of Arken. The storyboards are done. The plot outline is done. All I've got to do is flesh it out, and I'm so excited to bring this novel to you. You're going to see a lot of personal development and a lot of characters, you know, meeting their own struggles, whereas before it was this huge struggle that kind of everybody had to fight against in their own way. Now it's going to be all about individual stories. We're going to meet some new characters that we haven't met before. We're going to find out what happened to the potentially maybe child of two very famous warfighters in Arken lore. Yeah, it's going to be a fun book, and you're not going to want to miss it. I will keep you guys posted as that journey unfolds and we start experiencing the world, you know, after the war, right? There are so many books out there about war, but there aren't that many books about what happens next. To find out what happens next, you'll have to read the Tears of Arken when it comes out. All right. So that, my friends, is what's up in Arken. All right. For our next segment, I am very excited to present to you our short story winner for this week. Now, this week we had some really cool submissions. We had a submission from Chris Gulick. We had a submission from Pamela Desmond, who is our previous winner 2 weeks in a row of our short story, and Chris is also one. But we also had a first-time submission from Jennifer McMullen. Now, what I have said repeatedly is that the submission with the most reacts, so the most likes, heart emojis, care emoji, whatever, the most reacts would win. But none of y'all reacted to any of these stories. None of them had any reacts. So I picked the winner, and I picked the winner based off first-time submission. So, Pamela, I loved your story. I read it. I loved it. It was awesome. Chris, I loved your story, man. I always love your writing. Actually, Pamela, I meant to tell you, you might consider starting to write more. I think you're really talented. Yeah, you have a very good mind for scenarios and setups. So, keep that in mind. Anyway, so I picked the first time entry just because I'm so excited that somebody else is participating in this. It's just awesome, amazing. I love it. So our short story contest winner for this week, titled Yesterday at the Amusement Park by Jennifer McMullen. Yesterday at the amusement park, I was followed. I went about my day thinking it was just a silly feeling. Of course, nothing is following me. Every ride I was on, I felt like something was watching me. As I started to worry more and get anxious, I looked around and saw no one. Not a single person, even slightly interested in my anxiety. I felt as if every corner I turned, it had an eerily quick way of catching up, as if it knew I was trying to lose it. I thought to myself, if I could just make it to my car parked over there under the tree, I can make it out of here. It seemed like it was all in my head. I finally reached my car and heard a sound and snickering behind me as I fumbled the keys. As I looked behind me, I saw it. An overly excited squirrel chasing what seemed to be an acorn attached to the loose string dangling from my backpack. Jen, I loved it. I loved the story. I loved it. So when I first started reading this thing, we've had a ton of conversations. For those of you that don't know, Jen is one of my best friends. Love this girl to death. We're like family. But she abandoned me and moved to Iowa. Anyway, we've had a ton of conversations about, being a woman in the United States and sexism and, all kinds of stuff like this. And so when I first started reading this story, I was like, okay, this is going to be a pointed piece about, the anxiety that comes with, being a woman and being followed by men or something like that. And like, this is going to be like a cliffhanger one, right? So that's what I was thinking as I read it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome, And then I get to the end and I just have this image of you walking around all day with like the string hanging off your backpack and this like squirrel chasing it around, trying to play with it like all day. And it's just so perfect. Like I was at work when I read it and I was supposed to be working. But I read this short story and I was just like, yeah, really, really good stuff. Thank you so much for submitting that. It was awesome. Love it. Keep writing. Amazing. Thank you to everyone else who submitted short stories for this week's contest. Our title for next week's short story will be What Happened to My Dignity. What happened to my dignity? Yep. That'll be the title for our short story next week. What happened to my dignity? Interestingly enough, Jen McMullen could have posted this story for next week's title, What Happened to My Dignity, but it fits very well for Yesterday at the Amusement Park. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you very much for your submission, and thank you to Chris and Pamela for submitting as well. Keep writing, guys. It's so much fun that you guys are participating in this. Let's see. Dang, you're doing that again. Doing what again, Brenda? Help. I don't know. Doing what again? Yeah, Jen, that's how I feel at work today. Yeah, great short story submission. Thank you very much for that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for the Junkyard's Got Talent. All right, welcome to the Junkyard's Got Talent. Very excited. This is week 3 of our competition. Week 1, we had Melissa, who sang Hallelujah, and it was amazing. Beautiful performance. Last week, we had Lee Ross, who busted out some dance moves for us. Amazing performances. This week, something a little bit different. I'm very excited to introduce, for the first time on the Junkyard's Got Talent, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kelly Pipin.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of Jack's Junkyard. My name's Kelly Pipin, I'm from Something Like Yesterday, and you'll get to see a little bit of me today on this episode. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Hopefully you like what you hear. Go like the band page, Something Like Yesterday on Facebook, and like Jack's Junkyard. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Thanks, Jack, for having me on. I really appreciate it. You guys all have a good day. Be good to each other. Love y'all, and we'll see you soon.
of course, Kelly sends us a super emotional song. Jerk. But I have a duty to perform as the judge of this talent show. And with that duty in mind, I have to say, Kelly, it's a yes from me. It's a yes. You'll be going on to the next round. Okay, but for real, I love Kelly Pipin. I've seen this video before. I know I try to put up talent videos that I haven't already seen, but I've watched this video a number of times, because I support Something Like Yesterday and Kelly Pipin and all of his endeavors. I've shared it around a bunch, so some of you may have seen it already in the past because you are also fans of Kelly and his bands. So I've already seen this one before. I knew it was going to be a tearjerker just because that is what this song is. It's emotional, it hits you home, and it's amazing. But Kelly's an incredible performer. He is a very talented singer-songwriter, and just an all-around great dude. So if you haven't already checked out Something Like Yesterday on Facebook, you need to do that. Okay, Something Like Yesterday on Facebook. Support that band. They were the second band in the lineup for VetFest 2020. We're really hoping to see them again VetFest 2021. And Kelly was like hugely responsible for VetFest being a thing, so that's pretty important. But anyway, so thank you, Kelly, for sending that video in, and thank you for the introduction video. Super fun. Next week we'll have an exciting one for you. I'm very, very thrilled for next week's talent show, so get ready for that one. All right, that is all for today on the Junkyard's Got Talent. COVID! The sky is falling. It's the end of the world. Before we talk about COVID and all that nonsense, thank you, Rose. Yes, it is a beautiful song, and Kelly's an amazing performer. Awesome. Yep. And Brenda, short stories. Yeah, we're doing that again. Yeah, but people are actually writing short stories this time. It's really, really fun. You should try it. You should write one. Yeah. Anyway, so it's the end of the world. COVID's still a thing, right? And the coin shortage and all that stuff is happening, right? And a lot of people are blaming the coin shortage on COVID. That's not why we have a coin shortage. I've said this in the past. I'll say it again. The coin shortage is because all the military service members and veterans who are married, their spouses started requiring us to use swear jars. So we have had to put all our change in the swear jars. We have talked to our spouses about turning the change into the coin machines to get it back in circulation. And they have told us no, because the giant jars of change remind us of how terrible people we actually are. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I don't really understand the coin shortage. Doesn't make sense to me. It is what it is. COVID's still a thing, blah, 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 blah. What's interesting about, COVID being a thing is that this is one of those things where we have a huge spectrum of reactions to it, right? Some people are adamant that COVID is nothing but a government conspiracy and an effort for the government to control us, which makes no sense. Not to me anyway. And then you have like the far other end of the spectrum who think COVID is going to be the extinction event that takes us out. Like, I'm serious. There are a ton of people out there who think that. And then we have every perspective in between, right? Well, as I've said repeatedly with great gusto, where I see COVID is simply the reminder to us that we're slovenly human beings who live in a super dirty environment, and, wash your hands, cover your face when you sneeze and cough. I've said that so many times, and that's truthfully the simple answer, right? Wash your hands frequently, right? And, cover your face when you sneeze and cough. Simple, basic human courtesy. But here's the thing, right? COVID's a lot bigger than that, okay? So let's talk about COVID in reality, right? So I don't know what to believe. This is where I'm at. I no longer know what to believe. We have state governments admitting that they falsified or completely misinterpreted or misrepresented the COVID case and COVID death data coming out of their states, right? We have hospitals that have admitted the same thing. So if the hospital's lying about their numbers and then the state government is taking the numbers that aren't true to begin with and then overinflating them still, who knows what the reality of it is at this point. And then we have other states with huge numbers that are saying, no, it's 100% factual data. But how do we know if they're telling the truth? And how do we know that the states that are saying that they overinflated the numbers are telling the truth about overinflating the numbers? Like, we don't know what to believe. And then we have, DHS says, this is how you handle this, and this is what you do. And then we have, you know, World Health that says this is how you handle this, and this is what you do. And then CDC says this is how you handle this, and this is what you do. But then all of those organizations change their direction, it seems like every other day. So we have state governments that say to do this, and then the next day the same state government that said to do this says, no, don't do that, that's the wrong thing, do this. I don't know what to believe about this thing anymore. Like, I don't know. I used to, like, when this thing started, I used to feel like I had credible information that I could access about, you know, infectious rates and, you know, death rates and, you know, permanent, causality, or not causality, that's the wrong word, but permanent effects after this thing was over. I used to feel like I had credible information that I could rely on to determine, like, what was really going on with this thing. But now I feel like I'm trapped in this world where I don't know what's true anymore. I don't know who to believe, because everybody that has a voice on a national stage that's supposed to have credibility behind what they have to say is telling us different things. Yeah, Rose says, I'm a healthcare professional and I don't know what to believe either. Yeah. And that's the thing, is I talk to healthcare professionals like Rose and like, you know, Todd Krause and, you know, many of my friends who are in the healthcare industry, and they're telling me the same thing. Like, we don't even know, because we're getting told different things all the time, and it's just like, it's crazy. COVID exposes a couple of important things. One, it exposes that we're dirty, nasty human beings and you need to wash your paws and cover your face when you sneeze and cough. Duh. It exposes that, right? But what COVID also exposes, if you didn't already know this, is how absolutely broken the information system is in our country. It's broken. Yeah. It's absolutely broken. So somebody said something the other day about how if you're getting scientific information from Facebook posts, it's not scientific information, because scientists don't post their findings on Facebook. They post their findings in scholarly journals. I agree that is true. I can access some of those scholarly journals because I signed up for them, because I requested access, because whatever, somebody sponsored me to access them, whatever. So sometimes I can read that stuff. Most of the scholarly journals that I have access to deal with physics, because quantum physics, particle physics are very, very interesting to me. So I read a lot of stuff about that stuff. And then I have access to some scholarly journals about American history and global history. I don't really have access to anything in the medical field, and even if I did, I can't understand 99% of that, right? Not that I can understand everything I read about physics, because I don't. But, you know, the problem is that the everyday average citizen doesn't have accessibility to a lot of the places where these things are published, and we don't know what we're reading, right? And then we have the same problem if we say, okay, fine, so we're going to have someone translate those scholarly journal articles, you know, those published papers, blah, 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 into layman's terms so the average person can read them. I appreciate that, but then now we have a second line of credibility, right? Is the translation right? Because that's happened before, where somebody has translated a scholarly article into layman's terms so we can read it and understand what it says, but then the, you know, original writer or other professionals in the field are like, no, that's not what that says, the translation's wrong, you know, the interpretation's wrong, whatever, and then there's this immediate infighting and bickering, and then we're kind of left sitting there in the same situation right now where we're like, we don't know what's true, right? And it used to be that we could trust certain news sources, we could trust, you know, certain politicians, the office of the president had a certain amount of truthful credibility to it, but that's not even true anymore. Right? Because the office of the president puts out different messages. The president says one thing in, you know, a live broadcast or in a press release, press conference, but then 20 minutes later, something else is put out of the White House press room that says something completely different. You know, and every major politician that's speaking right now, it's not just reserved to the president, but every major politician that's speaking right now is saying multiple different messages, so we don't have that credibility anymore. News sources are reporting like 8 million different things, so we don't have that credibility. So the biggest thing that I think COVID has exposed is how broken the information transmission system is in our country right now. We have no idea what's true, or even where to go to find out the truth, because literally every time I see somebody or I hear somebody talking about, oh, this source is the truth, okay, because I'm me, I'm going to investigate that source, and then I find out that that source is severely, you know, labeled as incorrect by many other sources and, you know, supposedly credible outlets. So really what we're finding is that I don't know what is true, and I don't even know how it is possible to find out what is true. When we think about the modern age and what the apocalypse looks like in the modern age, this is it, right? You know, in World War II, you know, or previous, or during the Cold War previous, the apocalypse was, you know, invading troops falling out of the sky in parachutes, or nuclear weapons falling out of the sky. You know, it was these mass casualty events. But I think we're in the information apocalypse right now. I think that's where we're at. We're in the information apocalypse, right? That's where we are. And even like earlier in the show during the news segment, we talked about the, you know, the explosion that happened in Beirut, Lebanon. But even then, there are multiple news sources coming out of Lebanon that are saying different things. So how do we know what's true? We're at a point where you really cannot believe anything unless you can see it physically right in front of your face. And that's interesting. That is a rough place to be in, because our society and our culture has become so driven by information and access to information. I mean, think about it. 50, 60 years ago, before the internet was a thing and before mass television broadcasts were a thing, you really only had the local news, right? And, you know, even before that, you only had the radio. And then before that, I mean, when we're talking 100 years ago, there was nothing. All you had was what was right in front of you, or what was printed in your local fish wrapper, right? Newspaper, for those of you not familiar with that term. So, you know, geopolitics and stuff like that really wasn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, because all you had was what was right in front of you. And people didn't really concern themselves with a whole lot outside of their own communities, because it didn't matter, right? And they didn't know about it even if it did matter. Well, now we live in a world where there's a ton of information at our fingertips all the time, and we got very used to that over the last 30 years. We've gotten very used to the idea that I can pretty much research anything I want to. Well, that's developed a couple of different kinds of people. It's developed people who just automatically share anything. They'll read the headline of something and think this is what's up. They'll share it. They don't even read the thing, the whole thing. They just read the headline, right? Then you have people who research everything as best they can. Well, the people who just automatically share things are in their heyday right now, right? Because there's a ton of stuff out there to share. The people who are researchers are in they're living their nightmare right now, because I don't even know where to go to credibly research this stuff that I see anymore. Yeah, this is the information apocalypse. So how do we get back to a place where there are news sources or political sources or, you know, information sources that are trustable? How do we even do that, right? For a while, Snopes.com was supposed to be like the credible source that fact-checked everything, but they've been wrong about a whole bunch of stuff, right? And then it was Vice News, and they were the credible source, but they've been wrong about a whole bunch of stuff, you know? So it's man, it's frustrating. And so I say to myself, okay, I can't trust anything that I don't physically see, so I'm just not going to concern myself with anything that's not immediately in front of me anymore. Right? I'm not going to worry about the rest of it, because one, I can't do anything about it. I can't do anything about the geopolitical situation in our world. I can't do anything about it. I can't do anything about the Beirut bombing. I can't do anything about, you know, I can't do anything that's not directly in front of me. So I'm just going to focus on what I see directly in front of me. And I say that to myself, and I feel better in the moment, but the reality of it is I can't do that, because I grew up in a world where information is readily accessible. I mean, even as a kid, before we owned a computer, before, you know, the internet permeated our society, we still had the daily news, you know, that was broadcast from, you know, major news sources around the world. And even if we watched the local news channels, which we did, they still picked up a lot of stories from network news and, you know, stuff like that. So I grew up in a world where information was at our fingertips, and my focus has always been much bigger than what's immediately in front of us, just by product of the world that I grew up in. So I don't know that I can shut it off, you know? But, you know, so there's kind of my philosophical question for the day. How do we function in a society that's become so used to access to information when the information we access is no longer trustable? What do we do? Yeah. Food for thought, right? Something to think about. So, you know, I said when this whole thing started that I expected COVID to be here for a month, maybe two, and then poof, gone. Now I'm in a situation where it started in February, and here we are in mid-August, and it's still here, right? And there's still tons of regulations and restrictions in place, and nothing has really gone back to normal. They're about to run the Indianapolis 500 with no fans, which has never happened. It's crazy. You know, a lot of stuff is happening. We just had Vet Fest with 25 people in the room. Like, I mean, it's crazy, and I don't know when this thing's gonna be over. You know, and I'm an essential worker, right? So, you know, when this thing started, I was like, meh, it's fine. My life hasn't really changed. I wear a face mask, big deal. I still don't care about the face mask. I don't see how it's that big a deal to wear a face mask. It's not that big a deal. Just put it on. You know, I fought it a little bit when it first, you know, when COVID first came out, because I was like, cover your face. You know what I mean? But where I really started leaning heavily on it is when we started looking at transmission rates and stuff like that. But the thing is, now I don't even trust the transmission rates I was looking at. But, you know, the thing is better be safe than sorry, and wearing a piece of cloth over my face is not going to affect me in any way, shape, or form. So fine, wear the face mask. Is not that big a deal. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that if they're right, wear the face mask. If they're wrong, who cares that you wore the face mask? It's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? You didn't really lose anything by doing that. And I wear face masks to support causes I care about. So I'm currently rocking #MMIW, right? Missing Murdered Indigenous Women on my face mask, because it's a cause that I very much care about. And the guy that made the mask for me is amazing, right? So, you know, it's not that big a deal. But the thing is, like, how are we going to function in a world that's so used to information access when we can't trust the information that we access? Something to think about. All right. All right, well, we've been on for an hour and 12 minutes, and that has concluded our regularly scheduled program. Let's go. What's up? Welcome to Ask Me Anything. Now is the segment of the show where you can put your questions into the chat box. I will answer almost every question that you ask. There are some that I'm going to be like, yeah, no, I'm not going to talk about that. But for the most part, I'll answer your questions. So what questions do you have? Type them in chat now. So what I'm going to start doing in the future, just FYI, is I'm going to, as you saw today, I created an event for the show. I'm going to do that for all future shows, so you guys always know where they're going to be, because life is chaotic and I don't always schedule them at the same time. So you guys will always know when the show is going to be, so there. And then what you'll have the ability to do is to drop your questions into the event post. So it's been said to me a couple of times by different fans of the show that, you know, I always think of these questions during the week and I really want to ask, and, you know, whatever. And then by the time I get to the show, I'm just like, I don't remember what I was going to say. Yeah, totally understandable. I get it. So I will start doing that, so you have the ability to drop your questions in on the front side, and then I'll read those questions out and answer them on the air. Very, very exciting stuff. And while I'm waiting for you to drop your first questions into the chat, two things. One, go down to the bottom of your screen and hit that heart button a bunch of times. Just hammer that heart button. Boom, 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 boom. What's up, Derek? Welcome to the show. I was just talking about you. Yeah, hit that heart button a bunch of times. Okay? Please and thank you. Okay? Next, type your questions into the chat. All right? All right. Thank you so much for those hearts. I'm seeing those pop up. You're awesome. Yes. Many hearts. Love it. Thank you, guys. All right. Yeah. You may also note on my page, there are some ads for a Thin Red Line. Yeah, I need you guys to share those as far and wide as possible, right? So, guys, this is my career. This is what I do. I write books for a living, right? Yes, I have a day job. I would like to get out of that day job and write books more, okay? This is, like, what I'm doing moving forward. So, here's the thing. I am entirely independent. What that means is I don't have an agent. I don't have a publisher. I don't have, a marketing person. I don't have any of that. Yeah. How much poop can a poop head poop? I would assume a lot. I don't have any of that. So everything that I'm doing is independent, and I do that for a reason. Okay, there's a reason behind that. I think that art in its most pure form is when it comes directly from the artist, and I'm talking about paintings, films, songs, any of it. It's when it is the best, right? And that's the space that I live in. So I want my stuff to be mine. The problem with that is that I don't have an advertising person. I don't have a marketing person. I don't have an agent that's paying those people to do things and directing them to do things. Everything that I do is based on sharing it and talking about it. Well, I need more people to see it in order for me to talk to them about it, right? So invite people to the page, right? If you haven't invited your friends to Jack Kiesling Books, please do that. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, right? Follow all of those things, right? The more people engage in the conversation, one, the more I have an opportunity to sell my stuff, right? Because you guys are not going to financially support me. No, Ryan, that's not why. Because that's not the way that works. That's not the way that works. So normally when you publish a book, right, you send query letters out to agents. And once you get an agent, the agent gets the marketing and advertising and all of that stuff set together for you, and then the pay for all of those entities comes out of the revenues from the books. Okay, so but here's the cause, the end state result of that happening. So let's say that a Thin Red Line had an agent, right? Let's say that I had an agent and a Thin Red Line was being professionally represented. Okay, so that sounds cool, because then they're gonna have all of those things for me. But what that means is that first edition Thin Red Line is like $25 at least. Yeah. Right? Because now the cost of production of that book is not just the cost of printing it and then putting the cover on it and, you know, shipping it out. Now the cost of producing that book is paying the agent and paying the advertising and paying the marketing and paying the everybody else that's involved in that team. Okay? I keep my prices low because I don't have all of those overhead costs. I wouldn't have to pay for it on the front side. That's not the way that works. Okay. Now there are agencies out there that are like, yeah, give us 10 grand and we'll do the thing. Don't do that. If you're out there thinking about self-publishing or, you know, or publishing your first book or whatever, yeah, don't do that. It's a ripoff. Okay. They're gonna take your money, then they're gonna send you a box of books, and they're gonna be nice looking books, but that's it. Then it's over. Right? You're gonna get a box of books, and then you're gonna like door to door sell them to your friends, but that's it. That's over. And you're out 10 grand, and what you got in return for that 10 grand, 5 grand, however much they ask for, is a box of books. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. One of the biggest reasons that I'm able to keep my prices low is because I don't have that staff, right? Because I want the books to be accessible. Art needs to be accessible, right? Like, it's cool that there are painters out there that get several, you know, tens of thousands of dollars for a piece that they've done. That's amazing, right? But, you know, who's going to experience that if you're not top tier finances, if you're not upper crust? How are you going to get to experience that art? And seeing a picture of a painting is not nearly as impactful as seeing the work in and of itself, right? And certainly there are galleries and museums that you can check out that are amazing, right? I love going to art galleries and stuff like that, but, you know, I want art to be accessible. When you think about music, it's accessible because we have Spotify and iMusic and, you know, SoundCloud and Reverb Nation and all of these other things where we can access that art, you know. And in a sense, this broadcast and these shows, you know, are art, and they're accessible to everyone. And TV shows and movies and stuff like that, they're accessible for a low, reasonable cost. Well, if first editions of my books were going for $25, $30, how accessible are they? Even at $12, I've had, you know, plus shipping, I've had people tell me I can't afford it. Right? But I want it to be accessible to everyone, so that's why I don't have all of that staffing. That's why I don't, and I did when I first, you know, was getting ready to publish, you know, TFOA, the Fists of Arken. I sent out query letters and I talked to agents and I did the whole thing. And then when I was talking to those agents, they started talking about what that end product looks like. Yeah, okay, yeah, if I had an agent for TFOA, it would have gone through, you know, professional copy editing and all that stuff on the front side. So some of the issues that exist in that book wouldn't exist, right? And the first 10 copies that were, you know, the quadruple unicorns or whatever that had, no, you didn't, Ryan. Nobody paid that much. I have sales records. You know, the first editions that had, you know, missing page numbers or, you know, header issues and stuff like that wouldn't have existed because they would have been professionally copy edited and blah, blah, blah. So that's cool. You know, and the end state of it, it probably would have looked a little bit nicer. It's cool. But it wouldn't have the integrity of saying that every single word, every single mistake and flaw and beautiful moment and everything in that book was mine. It wouldn't have that integrity. And a lot of people that have it wouldn't have been able to. So, you know, just something to think about. Art needs to be accessible. How much does it matter if only people that have a ton of money can access it? You know what I mean? That's not what I'm trying to do. Yeah, I want to make it as a writer. I want to, you know, have my books be on the New York Times bestseller list. I want to have some of my stuff get turned into TV shows and movies and stuff. I want that. I want it all, you know? That's the goal. But I want to get there because of the integrity of the art. You know, and good agents can take a crap book and turn it into a New York Times bestseller. Like, not even kidding. Like, it happens. A good agent can take a crap book and turn it into the Twilight series. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not knocking, Stephanie Meyer. She's a talented writer. She came up with a great storyline. But let's be real. Those books aren't... They're interesting in terms of writing style and stuff like that, right? But, a good agent can do that. And that's awesome. But what I'm saying is, where's the integrity of the art? You know what I mean? So, like I said, I want to make it. I want to be huge, right? I want, someday a high school class is assigned to read one of my books to do a book report, and they grew up hating my book, just like I grew up hating Catcher in the Rye. I want that, but I want to make it because of the integrity of my art. So that's where I'm at with that. You did not pay $250. I have sales records. Nobody paid that. The unicorn books are special works of art now, and they'll pay for someone's college one day. I hope so. The only way that's going to happen is if I get big, right? If my books become important. That's the only way the unicorn copies are ever going to matter. I'm with you. I'd rather sell a sketch for $1 to someone who really loves it than make $1,000 from a collector. Yeah, 100%. Now don't get it twisted. Like, if somebody comes up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, we love your stuff, blah 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 blah. I want to pay you X amount of money, blah blah blah." For sure, I'm gonna take it. But I don't want to do that at the expense of everybody else. You know what I mean? Yeah. Collectors make the prices for the art they have. Yeah, you're right. And how rare a thing is and how popular it is has a drastic effect on it. And we're talking about two different things, because a painting is a one. It's a one. They may do prints of it later on, but a painting is a one. It's, there's not multiple copies and there's multiple. I get it. We're talking about two different things. It's apples and oranges. But you see where I'm at, right? Yeah. 50 Shades of Grey, right? 50 Shades. Look, maybe you read them and you like them, and I'm not trying to knock anybody here, but 50 Shades of Grey is horrible. It's horrible. Literally, it's a Twilight fanfic that turned into a softcore porn erotica thing. They're horrible. They're extremely damaging for, safe sexuality practices. They're extremely damaging for, sexism and women's roles in a sexual relationship. There are some really negative themes presented in those books. But you know what? Sex sells, and a good agent can make a crap book look like a rock star. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. Yeah. It's crazy. Yes, the line between capitalism and the need to eat and the integrity of the artist and his work. But that's the thing. Capitalism is what allows me to. That's the thing nowadays. People like to knock capitalism, right? But here's the reality. Capitalism is what allows me to do what I do. Right? Look at any other economic system on the planet, and you will see that art suffers major. But in a capitalist society, I have the ability to make something and go out there and sell it one person at a time. Every single sale I've gotten from any of my books has been grinding. And I said something about that in the comments earlier. Somebody asked me how sales were going for Thin Red Line. I said they're going good. They're better than TFOA was when it first came out. They're not as good as I want them to be, but they're good, right? But every single sale I've made of any of my books has been a grind. It's me talking to somebody and saying, this is who I am, this is my book, this is what I write about. That's what it is. I haven't begged anybody to buy my stuff, right? But every single one is a grind. But capitalism is what lets me do that. Capitalism is what lets people make paracord bracelets and sell them on Etsy. You know what I mean? That's what it is. That's what it is. I control my pricing, not somebody else, right? So, yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I liked my wife reading them for other reasons. You're so silly. He can't eat much. He's skinny. I mean, I'm finally losing that spare tire I've been carrying around for a while. Not knocking capitalism. That is why I love this country. We pay people for their goods and services, be it art or plumbing. The world has need of both. I agree. Yeah, I mean, certainly our economic system and the way that we spend money in major corporations and roles like that needs reform in this country, and we need to take a hard look at current regulations and stuff like that. But I'm not about doing away with capitalism, because that's what allows me to do what I do, right? Any other economic system on the planet, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, at least not this easy, right? No, I've never begged somebody to buy my book. I haven't gotten that far yet, right? But I still have my day job, right? So financially, I'm secure for the moment. I hate my day job, but it is what it is. So there are 7 of you on the show. We will give it another 5-6 minutes, somewhere in that ballpark. So drop your questions into the chat. What do you guys want to know? Yep. Hit me up. Anything. Ish. You know what I love? Side note while I wait for you guys to ask a question. Since I quit smoking, my teeth are getting so much whiter. It's amazing. I love it. It's great. I like having white teeth. They're still crooked AF, but, you know, we'll get there. I gotta sell books to have the money to get my teeth fixed. I have healthy teeth. I've never had a cavity, ever. They're just super crooked, mega snaggletooth. But, you know, it is what it is. I'm not planning on a, you know, acting career, so I guess it's fine. Oh, man. What is your day job again? I teach. Yeah, so I work for a corporation, and I teach management skills, people-centric leadership skills, a whole bunch of stuff like that. Yep. Yeah, so I teach managers and business leaders and stuff like that, all of those things. It's super, super fun. I love it. Yeah. Chew is much more better for you. I'm trying to kick that, dude. I really am. So where I'm at now is I'm down to, I don't do any of that during the day, and I allow myself one pinch when I get home after dinner. That's it. FOA question: how old was the tunnel under the throne room, and how many people actually knew about it? Okay, so if you recall back in chapter 1 of the Fists of Arken, Excellion talks about it a little bit briefly, right? So it was initially started by the very first king of Arken, right? So the king of Arken was like, this is awesome. So the Arken head, the capital of Arken, is backed up against the mountains, okay? So literally the way the fortress is built, the way the city is built is, so we have like the epicenter where the Arken head is, and then everything spreads out in a radius around it. And so we have the Arken head, which is the fortress itself and its defensive perimeter around the outside of it, right? And then beyond that, we have Arken City, which, you know, is surrounding the Arken head or the fortress, okay? But behind all of that are these massive mountains, okay? So it's backed up against the mountains. And so what the very first king, King Alex, realized was, if we ever get attacked, which when, you know, the Arken head was established, it was at a very unusual time. So basically, all of these people, the majority of the people in Arken came from the Cairnbon Island, okay? So Cairnbon was an island very close to and in the same chain as Jurin and a couple of other islands. Well, Cairnbon was a volcanic island, and the volcano erupted. So, you know, in, like, leading up to the eruption, the Cairnbon people put out to sea, and they landed on the coast of the Iron Fist. Well, over time, they separated into tribes and formed the 5 Fists of Arken, right? So we had the Iron Fist, the Wolf Fist, the Shadow Fist, the Elk Fist, and the Fire Fist, okay? And the Arken head was elected as the seat, and the Shadow Fist was the ruling fist of Arken, okay? And so, I do not teach Walmart greeters. Anyway, and so, you know, at this time, it was kind of uncertain whether this system was going to work or not. They weren't super strong. They didn't have a ton of people. And then they just separated their strength as a nation out into these 5, you know, territories or fists. And so King Ox was like, if anybody ever comes after us, we're backed up against a wall and we got nowhere to go. So he immediately started, you know, ordered the construction of this tunnel. So this was even before the Bloodstone platform and the throne room was laid. You know, the Whisper Hall's been remodeled a number of times since then in different iterations, and the fortress itself has been modified and changed a whole bunch over the generations. And so, you know, generation after generation after generation extended the tunnel. I mean, think about the process of mining a tunnel through a mountain. You know, it would take a long, long time. So, you know, this is a long process. Early in the creation of the tunnel, a lot of people knew about it. It wasn't really a secret. Like, everyone basically who lived or worked in, you know, the fortress, the citadel, knew, right? Everybody in the citadel knew that this thing was being constructed. Well, you know, time went by and the tunnel was completed, right? At least, you know, it exited somewhere. And so, you know, it exited most likely in uninhabited because, you know, it exits in the Inohaman territory, and we know that, but early on they didn't know that, so they probably didn't know where it really exited, as in terms of like cultures and people that live there. And so then, you know, and the Citadel was remodeled and the Whisper Hall was built, and we have all the bloodstone slabs being laid out and stuff like that. So at a certain point, most likely 4 or 5 generations prior to King Ixalian, they decided, okay, we really need to not let everybody know about this, because if they do know about it, they'll just chase us into the tunnel if we need to escape through there. Bloodstone platform was laid in, and they were able to build, a staircase descending into the tunnel. And there we have it. And so the majority of the Whisper Hall itself is actually hewn out of the mountain. So, the initial citadel, right, the fortress itself, was not quite as far back as it is now. They expanded off of the original fortress and put the Whisper Hall and then the adjoining rooms behind it, back, kind of pushed into the mountain a little bit. So it's been there a long, long, long time. Not that many people know about it in the current age. So, obviously King Ixalian knows about it. Princess Leandria didn't really know about it. Like, she'd probably heard about it here or there, but didn't really know about it. And really only the top commanders and advisors in the kingdom knew about it. And even then, most of them were not in the loop. And the reason for that being is it was literally for emergency escape. But if you're thinking about emergency escape and, like royal family and stuff like that, any conquering military is going to absolutely want to capture or kill the royal family, because they can't promise the security of their new throne with, the people they just usurped the rule from running around, someplace that they don't know about. So they absolutely want to capture or kill those folks. And so if, let's say, you are, let's say, Grandmaster Hale, right? So you're very, very trusted, master of coin for the Shadow Fist and for the Citadel, and about it, but you're not able to get into that tunnel before it's sealed, when the Citadel's being taken over. Well, eventually they're gonna torture, interrogate whatever the top, leaders in the community, and they're gonna find out about it, and they're just gonna chase you, right? So not that many people know about it. Yeah. I have a ton of this stuff written out in backstory. It's kind of like, so Tolkien wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and then he had all of this background information and world building that he had developed in order to breed credibility in the stories, and then he published a lot of that in the Silmarillion. I kind of have like the beginning of the Silmarillion in notebooks and legal pads and stuff that I end up spreading all over my desk when I'm working on these projects, because I have to develop character backstories, and I have to develop, lineages and all kinds of stuff to make sure that I'm not going, I'm not contradicting myself and stuff like that, which, probably still happens once in a while, but it is what it is. The armor and weapons in the hall, were they preserved for use or just dusted off once in a while? So a little column A and a little column B. So in the book, it talks about how, so what he's talking about is in the very first chapter of the Fist of Arken, we describe what the Whisper Hall looks like. And so this massive hall with these huge vaulted ceilings with glass in the ceilings and stuff. And lining the walls of the Whisper Hall are the preserved remains of battlefield captains and great soldiers of Arken armies past. So, they're preserved, their bodies are preserved, and then they're, forever guarding the Hall of the King. Okay, so, here's the thing, they're not cleaned, right? So, and it says that in the book. It talks about how the suits of armor are never cleaned. Some of them still showing the signs of, of blood and the scars of battle from when that person fell. So that being said, certain dry environments, metal lasts a really long time. So, I would assume, well, I wouldn't assume because it's my world, but, they are repaired. If they're damaged by time or whatever the case may be, leather dries out and the straps that bind the armor plates to each other, dry out or whatever, they are repaired if stuff like that happens. But just dust it off, I think is probably more appropriate. But they're certainly not polished or anything like that, because when the Arken people think about the honor of those that fell in battle, they think about that moment of death in battle being the moment of honor. So these people don't have this honorable view of killing, right? So we think about some cultures in the world today, we think about, we celebrate soldiers that killed a bunch of the enemy, right? That's what we celebrate, is the fact that they killed a bunch of the enemy. But in this particular culture, that's not what they celebrate. What they celebrate is the sacrifice. And obviously in our culture in the United States, we celebrate the sacrifice as well. But in the culture of Arken, they celebrate the sacrifice of the moment of death in battle as being the moment of great honor. And so they do everything they can to preserve that person's, honor in that moment. So, that's why they don't really clean the armor as best they can. just kind of preserve it for honor's sake. Now, you may also recall that Jaxus and the king both take up some weapons from some of those warriors deceased and give them to some of the people who go into the tunnel to escape from the Starland army, and for use. But one, those weapons are not that old. They're from people who have not been dead that long, right? We're not talking like reaching back multiple generations. Like a wooden bow that's like 100 years old. We're not going to be carrying that into battle anytime soon. You know what I mean? But so there's that kind of to consider as well. Yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but thank you for asking it. I'm really excited talking about my stuff. And with that, we're at an hour and 35 minutes. So it's time to call it quits for today, guys. Thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Get ready for season 1, episode 4, which will be on Monday next. So look for the event for that. Please, please, please like and share the page, share the post, share the video, share everything you possibly can. Click that button on the page that says invite friends, right? And invite anybody and everybody you possibly can to the page. The bigger it gets, the more people involved in the conversation, the more I can talk to people about my art and my books, and the more we can just share in opinions and thoughts and ideas, all right? I love you guys. Be kind to one another. Please, for the love of all things holy, be kind to one another. It's super, super important. Thank you for being on this episode of Jack's Junkyard. We out.
Don't miss your opportunity to meet Jack Keesling in person, in public, in a place.
Yes, I know. Because I changed it, but OBS is freaking out. So we just going to end it. I'm out.